Hi, I'm here with Pritesh Walia. We've been hanging out here at NAMM. I think we met last year at NAMM for the first time.
I believe so, last NAMM, 1 year from ago as well.
One of the things I found really inspiring is that Pritesh has a completely different way of working with learning jazz from, well, certainly from how it's normally taught, where I think everything is just like a bunch of scales and arpeggios, and you kind of have all these raw materials that you have to put together magically in a solo, which is just not really nice, and also quite different from how I usually teach, which is, well, at least a little bit better than that, but also still
a lot better, a lot more applicable to the real world, you know, because I've realized most of my students play so much and they'd learn a transcription, come to me and I'd be like, wow, this is insane that you can play an entire Joe Pass transcription top to bottom, no problem. And then I'd call out a tune or some tune that they've been working on and I'd ask them to play it. None of the vocabulary actually shows up in their playing. And it kind of makes me wonder how they can play exactly what Joe Pass played, but none of the ideas or fragments actually show up in their playing. So it makes me kind of wonder, where is the hole here? Because clearly, mechanically, they can play what Joe Pass played. So I guess there's a little bit of a lack of connection of how to take or separate these pieces of vocabulary and apply it.
And I have to say that I remember that quite vividly,
yeah,
with learning transcriptions, that you're learning something and then you're realizing that even though you can play the solo completely with the record and that's all working, then it's not just automatically means that your lines are sounding like Wes Montgomery or whatever.
No, yeah, it's kind of like the same aspect, and this might be a hot take already, of singing a solo back and thinking that you kind of have it down. You know, a lot of people say that, and if the singing is not really the important part is the application, and none of this is translating to your playing, then it's just going to the ether. It's not going anywhere. I call it surface level learning.
Yeah,
you know, you know the alphabets of it, but I don't think you know how to make a sentence.
Yeah, so the process is taking a piece of vocabulary and getting into your playing.
Yeah,
and not an entire solo. So maybe we should talk about what a piece of vocabulary, what a practical piece of vocabulary might be.
Yeah, I think a piece of vocabulary, in my opinion, would be anything that is a small nugget of information. It doesn't have to be very long, it doesn't have to be very dense. You know, like I always hear bebop players doing something, I believe this was Joe Pass does something like this. This is like a very common enclosure,
yeah,
right? And I would just hear him play, if he's playing like All the Things You Are.
Yeah, so really sort of sticking to that thing.
Sticking to that thing. Now, you know, there's a lot more of information that is going on, but just those like three or four notes of enclosing one note already is vocabulary. For example, if I take that idea and I take a C triad just on the top 3 strings. Now, one very piece of information that I would tell all my fellow jazz guitar players: learn your triads, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely learn triads. Maybe, yeah, exactly. Maybe turn
absolutely. And learn your triads. Not only there are a few ways to look at it. Not only going in a horizontal direction, but also vertical, because this can also be done this way, right?
Definitely.
The interesting part about it is that it can also go this way, because you can go,
yeah,
you know,
sure.
it can go that way too,
makes sense as well,
which is the interesting part of a scale too.
Oh yeah, right? Yeah, of course.
All 3 of them exist, right? So as a guitar player, know all of them. And these triads, check out all of them. Going to the Joe Pass thing, I realized that just this small piece of information, I kind of decoded it and understood that all he's trying to do is enclose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? If I just take a C triad already, I can apply the same exact formula on any sound of triad. So if you play C major, now I have the entire fretboard covered, and all I'm doing is going down the C major triad.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
So now if I'm playing, Instant jazz.
Instant jazz, indeed. But so let's say that we're working this into a song, because I think what I really find useful for this is, like, one thing is doing this now is still an exercise.
Yes.
Right. So it's just exploring how to play it, where to play it, where does it fit, and you can do that like this. You can do it in other ways with other chords, and there's still some options there. But maybe it's also useful, because what I think is really useful with this is, like, we still need to get from exercise land to
musical land. Yeah. I agree. And I think the idea also is, like, this is one variant of finding where it is. There are two sides of this. There's one of the mechanical aspect of it, of, like, how does this fit on your fretboard and how do I move it? And then the other aspect is to actually put it into a musical place, like a song. You know?
Yeah.
Like, even this is just going down, me going up. Is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also a really cool way to, like, start a tune.
Yeah.
You know, this is like the first four chords of all the things you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's first is the experimentation land a little bit, even though it can get a little too mechanical and mathy at sometimes. It is important to know it, because if you don't know how to stretch it, how is your mind going to be able to use it in the most fundamental way? You know?
Okay, so stretch it.
Yes. So, like, this is one way was, like, I know one place where I took it from, which is from
the past, yeah.
Now I took just a C major triad to go down, up, horizontally, vertically down, then descending. Now I kind of have the ability to, it's kind of clay for me, you know.
Yeah.
I know that if a triad is here or here or here, how does this small cell of information apply? So that gives me ability to kind of now start improvising with just that idea.
Yeah.
Now it's not just one shape in one place in one position. And also the practice of, like, this is a major triad. What is the same thing in a minor triad or a diminished triad or augmented triad? All of these apply to that same sound. So if I am playing all the things you are, nothing too complex. I would say like 90% of that 2/5 and lines that I'm making comes out of that one cell.
But now you're already doing it sort of in time. So
Yes.
how would you start practicing it if you're new to this kind of...
First, I would just practice it on one chord,
Okay.
you know, and see how many ways I can do this.
So just take the F minor and
Yes.
go on that one.
Yeah, and just...
So it's kind of like building the technique for that chord.
Yeah, and then also, like, understanding that F minor is not the only triad you need to play on an F minor chord.
No, of course not. But but now we're just taking. So
Yes.
we're also not so much focusing on that. We're just focusing on this is the vocabulary.
Yeah.
So that's the one that we're sort of aiming towards
Yeah.
turning into music, right?
Exactly, yeah. And slowly, the more you do it, and also, like, most of the times what I try to do is an exhaustive exercise where I do non-stop eighth notes and I don't stop, because that's where the holes really come out.
Okay.
You know, like if I'm playing on two chords or 2-5-1 or just one chord, I try and take this one piece of information.
So I would consider that to be actually quite difficult to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So
But
maybe-
I will not do it that fast.
Okay.
It will be very, very slow, but still keep constant eighth notes.
Yeah.
Because when the speed increases or when you have to play too many notes, that's kind of the space where you realize that subconscious memory kicks in more, you
Yeah.
know? That's where your actual vocabulary repertoire starts showing up, you know?
Yeah.
And that's also the place where most people start messing up, when they have to go constant.
For a lot of people, that's a heavy exercise.
It is a very heavy exercise, and it's also important as an improviser to know that is not the way to improvise. It's a way to practice, you know.
Yeah, no,
That's
definitely.
It's like coming up with a sentence after a sentence. It's just an exercise for you to see how long can you keep going without repeating yourself, without sounding the same, by using a small idea.
Maybe just if we stick with the first 4 bars of all things you have, try and do that slowly, just to show how you would do that.
Of course, yeah. Just the F minor, B flat, so the 2/5 to A flat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Do you want to like play chords for me? Yeah. Should we do it in time or just kind of open?
Just open it. Yeah.
You
Cool.
know.
Okay.
And I'm also like targeting some other chords around it. Like for example, I like to use for the F minor, and this might get a little complex, is to use I use like a C augmented sound. Gives me like a melodic minor flavor.
So you gotta go to that sound.
Yeah, you know, and which is the experimental side of it. Is like if you have a triad, it's important to understand we're still talking about that one phrase we got from Joe Pass, and this is how much material.
So I think maybe it might be more useful immediately to sort of stick with, okay, we're just going to keep it the harmony part of it basic, and then just really work on how does it get into the solo, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
I think one thing I think is really important about this is to notice that it's not a very long phrase.
No.
Because if you do this with long phrases, then it gets, I mean, several chords or anything, it gets almost impossible to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, so you're working with that, and it's still straight 8 notes. You would go straight to just playing all 8 notes right away?
Yeah, I mean, first I'd pick a very simple like Charleston rhythm, which is just this. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That kind of sound, and I will try and make my lines be that 8th note, dotted 8th quarter sound. So right now I was kind of playing around like melodic minor sound, right? Which is, you know, if I just stick to the triad, just F minor triad.
Yeah, okay, I got distracted. So the concept is a little bit like finding these small pieces of vocabulary. Right now it's like on a closure, exploring how to apply that to something simple that you can find in the songs.
Absolutely.
And then try to move it into the song.
Yes, absolutely. You know, the important part is to differentiate between the math aspect of it and making the music aspect of it. You know, the practice doesn't always sound musical, and that's the point of the practice. You know, is to figure things out so you can sound.
Yeah.
You know?
And then sort of find a way and be aware of that what you're practicing, that you have already a plan for where it's going to go.
Oh yes, it's a big problem nowadays that people want to practice and be musical at the same time. That unfortunately, my friend, is not practicing at that point. I was the guy in the practice room who always sounded terrible, but that was good for me. Eventually I realized, because I was always making progress. There's a tendency for us as players and people that are practicing their craft to enjoy that we're playing and get into it, turn on a backing track and be like, I know where this is.
Which is, of course, you have to have fun when you're playing as well,
Yeah.
but it's but you have to be aware of the fact that indeed if you're just doing the things that you know and you're not pushing yourself to get further. If you ever see live concerts with somebody like Michael Brecker, he's getting in trouble so often. And he wants to do it.
He wants to do it.
He wants to go. He wants to push it so that he can try out new things all the time. I think that's definitely sort of the thing to keep in mind especially when you're practicing. So yeah, thanks for dropping by. Where can people find you? You're working on a big band album. You have like 3 or 4 albums that are coming out.
I have a Brazilian record coming out next year and a big band record coming out this year. With Aaron Parks and some really
it sounds amazing. I've heard some of it.
Jerry Bergonzi, some of my favorite players. So they're coming out in June this year. Excited with the whole book and score and everything. So I'm excited for that. Yes, super thankful to be here. This was really fun.
Where can people find you?
People can find me on my website, Pritesh Walia Music. I have a bunch of lessons and things available there, and also a place to reach directly to my inbox. So you can always reach me out there, or my Instagram also is available, Pritesh Walia.
Cool. I'll of course link to those, so you can find them. Great. Hey man, thanks for coming.
Of course, absolutely, my pleasure.
And
this was fun.
If nothing else, I'll see you next year.
Yes, absolutely.
If not before.
Every year.
Great. Hi guys.